What's going on, everybody? Oh, and the intro. What's going on? We're live, guys, everybody. Welcome to another week of B.O.S.S Talk. Wednesday, definitely wrong day of the week. Natalie, you there?
Yes, the intro.
All right, good. We're good.
Oh yeah, that's better. Chef, you there? Uh-oh.
Okay, we good now. Is it clear? You hear me?
Yep, now we
What's
good.
going on? It's the super dope week. Welcome to week episode 121. That's a
Wow,
lot of consistency over there.
for real.
All right, guys, welcome to another week. We're so excited to come for you today, guys. This week we're talking about maintaining excellence via trials and tribulations. So, first off, then we haven't talked in like 7 days. So, what's going on with you? Give me a little update. What's the vibe?
I'm so happy after a long dry spell, your girl is back in action, got a new client. I'm excited about that. This client is challenging me to go deeper as far as looking at the core aspects of our messaging and who we're talking to. When you're as an entrepreneur, we always hear, your niche and your target audience, and really tapping into that clarity behind who it is that she wants to work with so that she's not draining her energy, her time, her money, or any other resources trying to, attract this ideal client, right? And so we're really getting very focused. We're really getting very fine tuned. We're down to like looking at the day to day of her or the moment by moment of her ideal client. So what is she doing in the morning from 9 to 12, right? What are the conversations is she having with the people that she is in relationship with during that time frame? How does she, what is her routine when she goes to bed? Like even getting to that, down to that, and just naming that client and really saying, so if the client's name is Shanika, right? It'll be like the question that you ask, what kind of content does Shanika need to see right now to make it a yes? What kind of content does Shanika need to see to go from a cold lead to a warm lead? What do I need to say right now at this particular time for Shanika to say, you know what? I have been thinking about this, but now so-and-so is the expert. It's finalized in my mind. She's the expert when I have this problem. So just really getting to that place where we know exactly who we're talking to, the one, and calling that one specific person out.
That's really good. I think too. That's really big entrepreneurship because you can be multi-gifted, but you also have to know what is your lane for the season, right? So as you really kind of fine tune your lane, you start to focus on what things make sense, what things are not for now, and how do I attract my clients. For me, I have different avenues that I operate in, so I have to know what avenue operates during that season as well as to reach that client. For me, this week has been really about focusing on what matters most, about prioritizing and really putting first things first, as the book Stephen Covey talks about. Because sometimes we're all over the place, but we don't take time to say, well, you know what? We have these five things, but we can do one thing at this time. And it's okay. It's not saying you're going to mess with the other stuff too, but sometimes if you dedicate a good hour to one thing, you can get so many things. If you do five things, every hour is dedicated towards something different. So that means every day for a week, you worked on five things for 20 times in a day. So 20 times in a week, you've had 20 hours of success. It was 25 hours of success, right? So it's okay to do little things at a time. Just focus and get it done, right? Um, so I realized too, even to go on our topic, maintaining excellence through trials, show up even when it's hard. You're gonna be in certain situations where life seems to just throw everything at you, right? But it's up to you that no matter how it seems, you have to show up and you have to show out. Because sometimes the test is really seeing how much you can really handle and getting things done. All right. So scripture reference for this week is James 1 verse 2 through 4, which says, "Count it all joy when you face trials, because the testing of your faith produces perseverance." Right? When you go through things, I know it seems like, oh, why am I going through this? But it's a point of saying, what is the lesson behind this? Because there are a lot of things that we go through life that we have to experience to go to the next level. There's certain battle scars you have to understand to, like, for example, is if you have in the kitchen, right? We know that the oven is hot, so you have to have towels for it, right? But if you're not aware of that, you can find out the wrong way by burning yourself. They're like, okay, so maybe I shouldn't do this way. So certain trials teach you a very important lesson in getting things done, right? And just know that excellence is a mindset, not just a move, right? You can't just feel like being excellent one day, the next day you're not. It has to be something that is not governed by your feelings, by being who you are. Trials don't excuse sloppy work or poor attitude. There's sometimes two people will give you a 50% because, I'm not feeling it today. But when you are dealing as an entrepreneur, you don't have days off where you could just be rude or you cannot get things done, because next thing you know, if you don't get things done the proper way, with having spirit of excellence, it'll show through your business. It really shows through your bank account, because the excellence leads to profit. But once you're not being excellent, you start seeing things shift, and not in a positive way.
That is so good. I like that you talked about excellence is not just about how you feel, but about who you are. That's really, people have to really sit with that and allow that to penetrate their mind, because we think excellence is just in the doing. I have to do this thing with excellence, but it's not just in the doing, it's more in the being. If we take time to integrate excellence into our being, everything that we do will come out, excellent. Everything that we do will be our best, because it's now part of who we are. It's part of our makeup, our characteristics. And so we can't help but to do something with excellent quality, right? Like Chef Jay is phenomenal at putting this thing together, the outline for every week, right? He's excellent at doing it. I don't care when Chef Jay does it. If Chef Jay does it, I have to say this publicly, 5 minutes before we get on the podcast or 5 days before we get on the podcast, it's going to be exactly the same, meaning it's going to be of a high caliber, regardless of the time that he does it. Why? Because he spent a lot of time prepping this beforehand. He took the time to do it the 5 days consistently, to now at the point, if it shows up 5 minutes before, it's still going to be the same quality. And that's what we have to recognize. Trials and tests is sometimes going to be repetitious until we become the thing that the trial and the test is actually, the goal is actually for the trial and the test. So we think the goal is to produce something that is worthy of excellence. But the goal is actually to become excellent in who we are, so that whatever we produce is going to be phenomenal, right? I think about me and my own self. I have been just, I'm a learner. I love learning. I love just grasping information. I remember reading books when I was little and just thinking about, fantasizing and all that stuff. So when I became an adult and I had children, I could not help but produce gifted children, because that was out of my being. That was who I am. And I'm not saying if you're not gifted and you have a child with autism that, oh my God, you messed up somehow. Maybe your perception of what it is isn't accurate, because if a child is autistic, they have a superpower just in a different way. And so we have to start recognizing who we are first. Look at the tests and the trials that are coming. And sometimes it might be repetitious, but they're coming to produce our being, to really refine. Let me say that right now. The trials are coming to refine who we be, so that what we produce will always be high caliber, regardless of the when it is produced.
Yeah, I think that's the good part about it too. Oftentimes, sometimes we focus on being product driven, but not person driven. And sometimes that person is you. Where the thing I like about my business the most is that I try to give people a personal experience of who I am as a person, right? Where it's not just food slapped together, it's just not balloons put up, it's not just a menu. Everything has to do with a client. Like yesterday, I did a show in the event space for a repast, and I was talking to the client, and she was like, "This experience with you guys have made such ease to do certain things, right? You want to make sure when you are dealing with your clients that you're just not treating them like another check, but you're treating them like a person." This past week, we had a Mother's Day event, and it was super dope. I think this is the 15 year, and this was like probably like one of the best ones, I think, or top two or top four. What was so amazing about it was everyone had a personal experience. This one lady, she was doing interviews with me, and she said, this is her first year without her mom. And she said, honestly, this event, even for the 4 hours it was, it made me have such a good time, as well as I wasn't as sad because I was able to have a good time. So when you think about your product or service, it's not just about the product, it's about the human connection you're creating. And even too, like last week was not trying for me, but it was a very interesting week getting back to work and getting in the flow of things. That it didn't matter how I felt, I still had to get stuff done because I had, like 130 people coming to an event where it didn't matter how I felt. It mattered how I had to show up strong. But here's the thing about your feelings, right? You can still be transparent, but still show up strong, right? Once you talk about the issue, like, be transparent about how you feel about certain things, but you still have to show up strong, okay? Because Colossians 3, verse 23 says, whatever you do, work it with all your heart as a work is to the Lord, right? So the things that we do isn't even about us. When I come into a classroom, Natalie has a client, we all have a client, we realize that our work is not just about them. It's about really we're working unto the Lord. So we want to make sure that we carry excellence and have an excellent spirit, like you talked about in the book of Daniel, how he had an excellent spirit when doing things. Right? There's certain things that don't come out right because your heart is not right. When your heart is of excellence, when your mind is of excellence, everything follows. Um, and sometimes it's like you can't do it, but guess what? Philippians 4 verse 13 says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So when you are going through trials and tribulations, you have to strengthen yourself with the word of God. Be like, listen, this may be a fact, but the truth is I can do all things through Christ. Today, the fact is I don't really feel like dealing with people, but the truth is I can, do all things. So you have to always have a mind word battle. You know, my pastor always does something where you always battle thoughts with words, right? When you have thoughts and feelings, you battle them with the word or positive words or affirmations, because the more you speak, the more you start to change. My mentor, Dr. Stacia, is that when she said when she had lack, she used her pen because the pen allowed her to speak those things and write what she wanted to see and to create imagination. And we had Boss Up a few years ago, and we did an activity about imagination. And when you start realizing that, let your imagination be greater than your situation, because there are certain things that could be a horrible situation, but your imagination will take you elsewhere. When you think about Walt Disney, all of that was in his head. When you think about Tyler Perry, all that was in his head. When you think about these people who have made it to, like Thomas, well, I don't say Thomas Edison because he didn't really create the light bulb, but when you think about the different creators, that was in their head. The Wright brothers, that was in their head. So when you imagine you can do stuff and you rely on your imagination opens up so many doors to allow you to get breakthrough, right? Um, I love when we were in school, we had picture prompts, right? So with picture prompts, it would give you a picture on a test, and it was creative, right? You have to write whatever you thought about this picture and make a story out of it, right? I think sometimes, especially in education, they've taken that out of school, creativity, imagination. And I realized when you have an imagination so big, it's hard for people to stop you because it's so big. You have to know that it's going to come to pass. So what happens is when you do have this imagination, when you see it, as it's processing, you have to really shift your mindset from when life hits you, I'm tired to I'm graced to do it. So I'm graced to produce this vision. I'm graced to produce this product. I'm graced to deal with this client. Because once you change your mindset, things become differently. And sometimes it's very hard because like the reality of feelings can be very detrimental. So you have to realize that, I may feel this way, but I know that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me because I'm graced to do this task. So whatever you're going through right now, think about your grace to do this activity, your grace to really produce abundance. I was watching something, and it was on CBN, and CBN, it be kind of a little politicky, but it was a show that was talking about like abortion, and he said the same said it pro life. He says, "Say I am a producer of abundant life." So even though that topic is, it is what it is. He what he said was so dope because he's a producer of abundant life. So when you start thinking about what you're doing, you're producing abundant life for yourself, for those who use your product. Because you got to think when God gives you gifts and talents, it's to bless other people and to help them grow spiritually, mentally, and physically.
Man, you said a lot, and I'm loving this conversation, and I'm glad because it just means that we're going into the deep. And I have to go back to the when you said be strong, right? That was the very first tip that you said, and it's so funny because and just changing your language, right? You said be strong, and then you simply said shift your language from I'm tired to I'm graced, right? And so we don't recognize, like, I don't think we give ourselves enough credit about how much power we have to actually shift our atmosphere. Just like you said, the words that the guy said, instead of saying I am pro-life, just say change it to I am a producer of abundant life. That really shifts your perspective. It really allows you to see the responsibility that you have. And I know I say all the time because I heard it from my pastor. I meditated on it and I said, that's me. I am pro-choice, both pro-choice and pro-life. Why? Because in the beginning, God said that he's given us the ability to choose in Deuteronomy. And then he says, choose life. So he's not taking away the fact that you have a choice. You have to be able to choose, right? And being able to choose means there has to be a something that's saying, this is, I don't want to say right and wrong because that's not where I'm going with this, but there is an obstacle, there is an opposition, there is a struggle that is present that requires you to make a choice. And the same thing with being excellent. Being excellent is a choice. You have to choose to be excellent. And you have to choose to be excellent where the one situation may be like, I can just show up and not have to exert any more energy, not have to do any more work and just be. But is that excellent? Does excellence in this specific context, wherever your circumstance is, does it require you to work more, to do more, to rest more, to be quiet more, to talk more, to stand up more, right? It's going to require you to get outside of your comfort zone, and it's going to require you to make a choice. You said be strong. And I've been reading Joshua chapter 1 this entire week and last week. And the thing that is resonating in Joshua chapter 1 is God telling Joshua, be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. Now, be strong and courageous is not a verb. That is not something you do. It's an adjective. It describes a noun. If it describes a noun being a person, place, or thing, that means it is who you are. Strong and courageous is who you are. So God is just saying, be yourself in the situation. You are already strong, so be that thing. You are already courageous, so be that thing. Make the choice choose the actions that coincide with being strong. Choose the actions that coincide with being courageous. And actually, strong is a word derived from the word strength, which means to resist attack, to resist force. That means there is a struggle that has to happen. There is a storm that has to come. There is something that has to be in opposition and resistance to you. And all you have to do is resist the resistance. All you have to do is not give into whatever is trying to overcome you. Be strong. So even when you have to stand strong in the midst of a situation that requires you to be excellent, resist choosing not to be. That's all you have to do. Resist choosing not to be excellent. Why? Because it's already on the inside of you. God wouldn't tell us to be something that we were not. We don't have to fake it till we make it. We don't have to put on a show. We don't even have to deal with imposter syndrome, because all we have to say to the imposter, this is actually who I am. This is who I am. I may not have been acting in accordance to who I am, but it is who I am. I'm going to take it back to my kids. You know, when they get out of character, you have to be like, look, be a Martin, whatever your last name is, be a Morrell, be a Williams. You know how we be, and then you list out the things how we be. Be that. Do you want to have a choice to make? Right? When other people tell you, oh, you don't have to, you don't need to, you could just, and you have to be like, am I going to be who God said I'm going to be? Or am I going to pursue another avenue, which will make me feel like an imposter because I'm not being who he said I was? So really and truly, and Coach Chef Jay, you really summed it up. It starts with what you're saying to yourself. It starts with what you're speaking to yourself. The language must be clarified, because if you don't have clear language, you will succumb to the opposition, to the storm, to whatever it is. So in the midst of it, you got to say, I'm graced. I know I feel like this is going to overtake me, but I am strong. I know I feel like I can't handle this pressure, but I am courageous. And you will see, just by expressing your feelings, but then telling your feelings, this is my identity, how your whole body is going to shift in alignment with who you are and not how you feel.
That's so good. And I think just going back to that is you want to create a personal excellence standards, even in emotional settings, right? That no matter how the emotions are, and I think I learned this really from my pastor Creflo about really compartmentalizing stuff that needs to be in order, because you can feel, but when you don't control your emotions, you can really do things that don't make sense. And you want to speak life over your work and your capacity daily. So even every day, like you want to get to the point where like speak life over your work in your capacity, because there are certain capacities we all have. We all have a capacity, right? We have a capacity to receive and a capacity to give. So once you start speaking life over it, you learn to create a standard for that. But even going back to it today, it's so funny. So I'm really big on like wiping stuff down with soap water and then sanitizing. So one of my students was like, "Oh my God, here you go with your wipe down." But it's the reason why. Like I think too, when you create an excellent standard, you have to realize why is that a standard first, right? When you create standards for your life, you want to realize why is this excellent standard needed? Because when you understand the need, it becomes easy to become that part. I think too, sometimes we have to really discuss the why with ourselves internally and through prayer, because once you know the why, becomes much easier for you to create that standard for your life. There are a lot of times we're doing things in our life that has no why, has no attachment to our purpose, to what is going on. But once you start to realize that, wait, hold on, I'm doing this because one plus one equals two. So that's why I got to do the one and I got to do the other one, because I know it equals the next level. But so oftentimes we just doing one plus whatever, and then we get the wrong number because we're not really identifying what we need in our life. So the more you start to identify why the excellence is needed, your emotions change based off the need, right? Um, like even to like we were baking cinnamon buns yesterday in class, and as we were baking them, someone turned the oven from 400 to 500. So some of them just got burnt up, right? And so they were saying, "Oh, why is this happening? Why is this?" The reason why I was saying don't touch the temperature log is because we had that part. So it was a mistake, but the thing about it is the reason why is because this happens when this happens. When sometimes you don't take time to examine the result of what you're doing, we call it understanding by design and education. Natalie and I have talked about this before. When you understand something by the design of it, you move differently based on your clarity of understanding, right? So when you are going through your process of excellence, knowing what's important is you want to find out, why do I do this, right? Because excellence in trials will be much easier for you to show up with excellence. It was easy for you to show up prepared, easy for you to show up focused and being faithful. Like today, before I got on the podcast, I'm like, I gotta make sure I do the stuff beforehand. It's because for me, it's like I know that my schedule is different now, so I have to take more time to get it done, because I want to make sure when we are putting stuff out, even though we are good at the get to the gab, I want to also have certain things that are in order, because when you realize why you're doing this. I know for us, we're doing this because we're, being a blessing to other people by talking about business, talking about things that we've been through. I want to make sure that we show with an excellent spirit that we have a guideline for this, because I want to make sure that we're showing up with something tangible, and I think sometimes too, I am a winger, but I want to also have standards, because I want to make sure that what we're talking about comes with the scripture. Because I think what happens is too, especially with Christian faith in this new time of preaching, there's a lot of motivational speakers without any scripture reference. Because the word says, hide the word in your heart, and when you learn the word, you start to do the word. But when you don't know it, it's hard to do what you don't know. Right? It's hard for me to expect you to win, but you don't know how to win when you've been surrounded by losers. So once you learn something, you start to move it. And the scriptures for that is when you feel like you're not able to do that. Second Corinthians 12 verse 9 says, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weakness." So it's okay to be weak, because in Christ you are strong. Right? Know that you're just like your grace to do this. Your grace to do this, because guess what? God's strength comes onto you. His super comes onto your natural and allows you to do that. And another thing too, when you are going through struggles, realize is that suffering produces perseverance, character, and hope, according to Romans 5, verse 3 through 5. Suffering produces perseverance, character, and hope. Certain things you're going through is just really building your character, right? I know for me, I'm really big on integrity, right, with different things. So there are a lot of times too, I may be surrounding people who not are integral, but I still have to be in the standard because that's a standard for me. And I have to realize that I have to identify for me what does excellence look like to me, right? Right now, what does excellence look like to me with what I'm trying to accomplish? And I want to be honest because sometimes too, you can be through things that you're not being honest with about yourself, and you end up letting the hardship silence your gifts. Your gift is meant to be on display because you're the salt and light of the earth. So you're going to go through things where it seems like you're going through situations, but realize that God is working something through you. So you have to show up. You can't just be off one day, but use the trials that you're learning as a training ground. Don't waste the lesson. The lessons you're going through, don't waste it on foolishness. Know that, okay, what am I supposed to get out of this? Let me not mope, let me not complain, because there's something I need to get out of this to go to the next level.
So good. Oh, so good. Let me not waste this. Let me not waste this trial. I'm talking to myself right now because I'm going through a transition, which is a trial. And it's funny because as you're saying trial, I used to, with my old ears, hear storm or struggle or suffering. But now I'm hearing it as test, right? The trial when 409, right? We talk about 409 all the time, and we brought it to our attention that it took them 409 trials to get to 409. That's why it's named that. But the 408 times, all of those trials failed until they got 409. And so now I'm hearing trials with a different perspective as just a refining, because this version of Natalie cannot make it to the final destination. This trial has to be tweaked. So there are some things that I am probably currently doing. Let me say I am currently doing that will need to be tweaked for the next one. Right. And you talked about how we can do that is first by examining our results. And I don't think enough of us do that, especially when we win. This is one thing that I teach entrepreneurs to do all the time is to test, right? Tests and trials are necessary for your result. It's necessary in order to tweak and refine to become more efficient and effective as a business owner so that you can eventually scale. But you have to be willing to sit in that time period and test and trial and examine your results, even when you win, especially when you win, because you want to know what it is that actually caused you to win, that it's not a fluke, that it can be replicated over and over and over again. The reason why we have so many franchises of McDonald's is because McDonald's created a winning strategy that could be, and a system that could be replicated all over the globe, not just in the United States where they speak English. All over the globe. In Japan, they could replicate McDonald's. And it's actually better in Japan than America. Sorry for y'all. But they have tested and tweaked and tried this thing till they get a winning strategy and they're able to replicate it. But they had to be able to say, when we did a phenomenal job, what was it? What made us do that well? Go back and really sit with it and analyze and examine those results. And that's one of the things that we need to do when we show up excellently and people say, yes, girl, you did it. Yes, dude, I love what you're doing. Go back and examine those results. Can we replicate and duplicate this everywhere we go? And it really does start with your being. If you're being like this consistently, right? And it's easier to replicate those results, which come back to what he said, those standards. And when you said standards, I heard boundaries and values. What are your boundaries? What are your values? What will you not do for money? I know what you will do for money, but what will you not do for money? If somebody came up here and told you to talk about witchcraft and talk about, getting naked and talk about whatever the case may be, will you do it for the right amount of money? You know what I'm saying? We watched that movie. How much you gonna pay me to sleep with my wife? Okay, because I got a number. And if you hit that number, I might just let you do what you do. Are we like that? Or do we have boundaries to say, It doesn't matter how much money. It doesn't matter how much you tell me that this is going to work. It doesn't matter how much exposure you could give me. This is what I'm not willing to do. And so what I'm not willing to do clarifies what I am willing to do. And you know if I am the right person to help you advance in this particular area or not. But you have to have standards. You have to have boundaries. You have to have values to come around that gift, right, that you have, so that you can actually move faster and further in your assigned area of expertise so that you can help more people. And I love when you say this, even though it be making me mad sometimes, because I'm like, why it got to be about them and not about me? But it can go in. And you're right. Some of us are really focused too much on ourselves. And when we focus so much on ourselves, we feel the weight of the pain. We feel the effects of the storm. And if we would focus less on how painful it is and focus more on how can I use these pain points, these results, these things that are these trials to now speak to someone else who may be experiencing this in the future, who may be my ideal client. So,
oh yeah, no, I think that's really dope. And when you think about that too, is I think when you develop a sense of excellence, you start to experience consistency. So when you are practicing consistency, you start to see that the things that were once hard to achieve, the standard is become so duplicatable that all I did before, same process. And I think too, thinking about Galatians 6 verse 9 talks about let us not grow weary in doing good. You cannot grow weary in doing good. You got to stay the course. Uh, and even Hebrews 12 verse 11 says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time. So it may seem like, oh, this is so hard, but it don't feel good right now. But it will, because you got to realize you're working on something. When you realize you're working on something, you got to make sure you are working on it consistently, because excellence brings elevation. You want to make sure that you can hear at the end of the project, well done, my good and faithful servant. Are you being faithful to what God called you to do? Are you being faithful to your purpose? Are you being committed? We got to realize too, one thing that's so important to me, I've always realized, is the reason why I work as my service unto God is because Psalm 75 verse 6 to 7 says, promotion comes from not the east, to the west, but from God. When you realize that you're doing this because you're looking to serve God, you always will be promoted. So don't worry about who's not treating you right, who's not doing this. Just know that, hey, I have to say the course for my own stuff, my own well-being, because I know that as I serve, God will promote me. He's a promoter. So keep sowing your seeds of excellence. Your harvest is tied to your consistency. Your harvest is tied to consistency. And also, too, you want to reflect. What is a trial teaching me about stewardship? The other day I had a conversation with my coworker about stewardship. Like, what is this trial teaching me about stewardship? You know, um, God's supposed to be good steward of our finances, of our time, of what we're seeing, or what we're hearing. And last one is you want to start thanking God in advance for the elevation. Because guess what? When you know you're being obedient, just know that due season comes. Due season always comes if you think not. So just know that, listen, just to wrap it up, um, that you have to show up with integrity, intention, and faith. Don't let don't let the fire dim your shine. God is watching how you move through the storm. You got to keep pressing, keep building, keep honoring Him. It's a life of honor, because once you honor God, you start to honor yourself. Once you honor people, it's a reflection of you showing God that, hey, listen, I am a disciple of Christ, and I want to make sure everything I do is pleasing to you, and that I am committed to being excellent. I don't care how it looks. I'm going to do things right, even when I don't feel like it, when I don't see it, or I don't know why. I want to make sure I'm always doing right, because guess what? It'll be the moment you slip up, will be the moment that it was ready for you to get your victory and your next level of promotion. You got anything to add, Natalie?
the last thing I'm going to say, man, this is so good, is don't let that pain stop you from your pursuit of excellence, right?
Mm.
Because as you pursue excellence, there are things that are going to become painful for you. And just think about it, if you are working out, or if you want to have you want to lose weight, or if you want to bulk up, because some people do want to bulk up and gain weight, it's going to be painful, especially in the beginning, right? When you're stretching yourself, when you're trying to cross over from where you were to who you are becoming, it's going to be painful. But don't let that pain stop you from pursuing excellence.
That's good.
Into the pain, and eventually the pain will go away, right? Eventually you'll be stronger for having gone through it. So continue to pursue excellence, and like Chef Jay said, excellence precedes elevation. I'm excited because I'm ready for my elevation. Whoop, whoop.
So good. And that's so good. So just remember that, guys. Just keep, your focus, your free integrity. All right, guys. Have a wonderful week on purpose. We got to see you guys. Well, next week. We got to figure out next week. All right, guys. Have a wonderful week. I got a job. I got to go back. Bye.